Welcome. This is Family Caregiving 101, Building Your Caregiver Toolbox. Next slide. My name is Veronica Sanchez Perez, and I am one of the family consultants at the USC Family Caregiver Support Center. Our team focuses on providing support to family caregivers such as yourselves as you navigate your personal caregiving journey. My background, I've been working with older adults and family caregivers for over 10 years. I have a degree in gerontology, and it is a passion of mine to be able to help families on their caregiving journeys. I am certified as a dementia care practitioner, and I also have recently received my certification for powerful tools for family caregivers. I am bilingual, so I am able to assist both Spanish and English speakers. It is my pleasure to be able to be here with you this morning and be able to share some helpful tips that I hope will assist you on your caregiving journey. Next slide. Some housekeeping guidelines. To make sure that this is an enjoyable experience for all of those present, please make sure you are muted. If you do have a question, we will do our best to answer them at the end. So feel free to put the question in the chat box. If you can, find a quiet space where you can minimize interruptions. Everyone will be treated with respect. And again, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Next slide. Our mission is to help families and communities master the challenges of caring for older adults with brain impairing conditions and or adults with multiple health concerns. Next slide. What we offer at our center, we have family consultations. What does this mean? You get individual consultations either in person or via phone with trained staff to provide ongoing emotional support, connect caregivers with community resources, and increase understanding about care options. In order to be able to speak to a family consultant, you must be enrolled in our program. There's also short-term counseling, referrals to individual sessions with licensed counselors to offer emotional support and help with the strain of the caregiving role when available. We also provide support groups. These are monthly meetings that are in a supportive environment where caregivers share experiences and exchange ideas to ease the stress of caregiving. In order to join our support groups, you must be enrolled in our program. Next slide, please. We also have the C.A.L.M education and training. Our C.A.L.M, which stands for Caregivers Are Learning More, are educational workshops and events that are designed to help family caregivers feel more confident about their caregiving role. Most C.A.L.M activities are offered virtually. Lastly, we also provide respite care. This is depending on funding available and if eligible. The respite will include brief short-term respite support to assist families caring at home for an adult with a disabling condition. In order to be considered for respite, you must be enrolled in the program. This presentation is made possible by different funding sources that support our center and all its programs. We receive funding from the California Department of Aging, from the Los Angeles County Aging and Disabilities Department, and our center is one of the 11 caregiver centers throughout California. Additionally, we may also receive other grants and donations from different funding sources that allows us to support and assist family caregivers. Next slide. What we'll be covering. Today we will go over who is a family caregiver, things to consider as a family caregiver, building your support system, importance of self-care, and we will have time for Q&A. This will be a general overview of things that as a family caregiver ought to be considered that will assist you in your journey. The goal is to bring awareness of possible community resources available to you, including connecting to our center for one-on-one support, opportunities and educational presentations and workshops, and lastly, help you connect with other family caregivers. In the interest of time, we will lightly touch upon key areas. This is the first of a series of presentations that will be offered by our center. There will be more presentations coming up that will provide you with additional information and support depending on topics of interest. Please make sure that you have registered to receive our newsletter with the latest information from our center. Please keep in mind that all caregiving journeys are not the same. Some of the information shared today may be new to you, or some of it may be a review for you, but you will walk away ready for next steps, depending where you are at in your caregiving journey. For our program purposes, let us define who is a family caregiver. A family caregiver is someone over 18 years old that is helping care for an individual who may be chronically ill, older frail person, physical disability, and or has a cognitive impairment such as Alzheimer's. Next slide, please. The type of care that a family caregiver may provide may include activities of daily living, short ADLs, or instrumental activities of daily living. Some of the examples for ADLs can be dressing, grooming, bathing, feeding, assistance getting in and out of bed, chair, toileting and continence care. And some of the examples for instrumental activities of daily living may include cleaning, cooking, driving, doctor appointments, managing medications, banking, shopping, running errands. Additionally, there are times when the family caregiver is also providing what's considered paramedical support. For example, assistance with G-tube feeding, oxygen support, glucose monitoring, wound care, and more. As a family caregiver, many times the caregiving is not financially compensated, but there are times when the family caregiver does get paid. We will address this later in the presentation. Question: who do you care for? Do you care for a spouse, an older parent, grandparent, aunt or uncle, in-laws, sibling, adult child with a disability, a friend, a neighbor, a godparent? Can you please take a moment and type in the chat box who you are currently caring for? Thank you. Some of you may be caring for a spouse, for a parent, a sibling, and though Many family caregivers have things in common. Keep in mind that each caregiving journey is different. The dynamics of the relationship can also impact the caregiving journey. Some of you might be caregiving now for a while others might just be starting on this journey. Please know you are not alone. For instance, in my case, I am currently helping care for my parent, which is very different than someone helping care for a spouse or an adult disabled child. I see there's a hand up. We will be taking questions at the end. Thank you. Next slide, please. Please know that you are not alone. Currently, we have about 7 million family caregivers in California, and across the US, we have about 53 million family caregivers. As mentioned earlier, today we will highlight key things to know and keep in mind for your caregiving journey. We will call it Building Your Caregiver Toolbox. We understand that caregiving is not always easy, and like mentioned earlier, relationship dynamics can be complicated. It's important for family caregivers to know that your feelings are very valid and it is okay and highly encouraged that you ask for help. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, in building your family caregiver toolbox, there are some things to keep in mind. The diagnosis, the home environment, possible options for help with care, legal aspects of caregiving, health insurance coverage, emergency plan, your support system, self-care for yourself, and resources. Next slide, please. Understanding the care receiver's diagnosis. Is this acute, meaning is it temporary? Is it a short illness? Or is it chronic, meaning long-term? The diagnosis may help you with better understanding of the illness and disease, future preparations for emotional and physical support, help you get information on what to expect, what support you might need, how to get connected to services, obtaining assistance from the health insurance, healthcare providers, chronic disease associations, and community resources, exploring Family Medical Leave Act or California Paid Family Leave, planning for caregiving support. For example, if somebody has a fall, it may be a short-term injury. If they're maybe needing to require surgery that, they have said might take 6 to 8 weeks to heal, then this is short-term. But if somebody has a fall leading to an accident that may result in long-term disability, then it's a different type of caregiving situation. Another example might be a stroke, progressive cognitive decline. So really understanding the diagnosis will help you try to obtain as much information and resources to help you provide support. If you are working, then being aware of your own company's paid family leave policies will be helpful. For California, we have a California Paid Family Leave Toolkit that you can find on our website. Please remember this. Caregiving does take a village. And as a family caregiver, you also need support. So I would like to once again remind you that there is support, there is help, and hopefully as we continue with this presentation, you'll be able to have a better understanding of how to continue to build your caregiver toolbox. Next slide, please. Something else to keep in mind is the care recipient home environment. Considering living arrangements is an important aspect of care. Is the care receiver able to age in place and stay in their own home? This might be possible with home modifications, for example, adding handrails, ramps, wider doorways, making the bathroom more accessible, including adding grab bars. It's also might be a consideration. Do they need to move in with a family or a friend? Depending on what's happening, do they need to move to a care facility, such as board and care, assisted living, a retirement home, skilled nursing facility? It really all depends on what's happening with the care receiver and their situation. It's an option that needs to be explored and discussed. It is not an easy discussion to be had. And some things that will need to be considered is the support available, finances available, the needs of the care receiver. So exploring options is always a good idea. And of course, as much as possible, honoring and respecting the decisions that the care receiver wants for themselves in terms of where they would like to live. Though keep in mind, sometimes it might not be realistic. For example, somebody that maybe has reached a level where living at home alone is no longer safe. And even if, for example, they have somebody coming in to assist them, the care is such now that it requires more than the care that can be provided by the caregiver, say. Sometimes it becomes around the clock care 24/7. And in that case, it might be time to revisit the current caregiving plan to explore options, always keeping in mind safety. Also, would like to remind you that a caregiving plan is fluid. It might be working great for you at this moment in time, but something might change and it may need to be revisited. So, flexibility is also important. For example, currently, my parent, who is 89 years old, is able to independently live at home with support. But as things continue to change, that current living situation will need to be revisited. And as a family caregiver myself, these are questions, these are discussions that are currently being had and preparing for the changes that we see are happening. Next slide, please. So, I'm thinking of the possible options that can help you with the care. For example, for some individuals that qualify, Medi-Cal might be a good option. Medi-Cal is California's public health insurance program for low-income individuals. What can Medi-Cal assist with? Some of the programs that the Medi-Cal can help cover is, for example, the in-home support services program, which some of you may have heard of, some of you might already have. Um, Also, they have the assisted living waiver, might also help with skilled nursing if that's something that's needed, and community based adult services. So, exploring the options will depend on each situation and will take into consideration finances, types of coverage available for the care receiver, and their care needs. If the care receiver can live alone and care for their personal needs like dressing, bathing, eating, going to the restroom, getting in and out of bed, this makes it easier on the family caregiver. The family caregiver may support with things like shopping, doctor appointments, running errands, household maintenance, chores. And so that would be someone that maybe can still stay at home with help from, for example, the family caregiver, or if eligible, in home support services. Another option for care would be exploring their health insurance, as some offer some help in the home as part of their annual benefits. This is not common and not all of them, but given that it's the beginning of the year, I would highly encourage you to contact the health insurance, the care receiver's health insurance, and find out if there are any new changes, if there's any support available in the home for them. For example, the example I gave earlier, where maybe somebody is recovering from a surgery, there might be some limited support in the initial recovery phase. So it's worth exploring. Also, many families opt for a fee-for-service caregiver, somebody that you or the care receiver is helping pay out of pocket. I know this again takes finances into consideration, which is why each journey is different, but this is also an option. Sometimes a family opts to have their care receiver move into an assisted living, um, which I realize can be very costly. So exploring the assisted living waiver is a good idea, or also enlisting the support of community-based adult services, which is they have adult daycare programs where someone can go for the day and then they come home in the afternoon. So if you're a working family caregiver and, for example, you do have Medi-Cal, then you can work with the care receiver's doctor to request a referral for community-based adult services. Or if the care receiver or you as the family caregiver is in a position where you can pay out of pocket for adult daycare, which is community-based adult services, then that is something that can also be explored. Recently, in working with one of my families, we did explore this option for them because it was something they were interested in. And the rate that I found was $100 for the day. And so for some, this might be a little too high. For some, this might be something that's possible. And so it is an opportunity for the family caregiver to get some support, some respite. So it's something to explore. Next slide, please. Additionally, in continuing to explore possible options for help with care, if the care recipient is a veteran, then sometimes the Veterans Administration does have support for caregiver. So you might want to give them a call and explore that option to see if they might be eligible. Informal care, such as family, friends, neighbors, and or volunteers, is also an option. You might be surprised at who might say yes to you if you reach out, and you might be surprised as to who will say no to you. But there is informal care available. Sometimes people, through their faith-based organizations, also receive assistance. For example, very recently, another client of mine had her own medical emergency, and the care receiver does require around the clock care. And so, in her particular case, her church family stepped up and they were able to provide care for the care recipient for 2 days while she herself was in the hospital recovering. And so this is another great resource to explore. Um, Personally, I've had to enlist extended family to provide assistance for me. And so I was surprised at how many people said no. And I was surprised at who said yes. But it is a good conversation to have as a backup, just in the event that you might need additional people to help you. For some of you, long term care insurance might be an option. This is very rare with the many families that I've worked with. Very few have this. We realize it can be very costly. But if you do have it, please give them a call and find out what eligibility requirements you might have. Sometimes there's a wait period, sometimes there's a deductible. So find out just so that you're aware. In the event that you need it, you'll be ready. Next slide, please. Considering the legal aspects of caregiving, this is really important. Please know that we are not legal experts. This is just general information, just to bring awareness to you. We cannot give legal advice, but hopefully, after this presentation, you'll be able to connect to, there are community legal organizations, or if you have somebody, an attorney that you can speak to, if you have questions about this general information that will be shared, then please feel free to reach out. So power of attorney. Power of attorney can include medical and or financial decisions if needed for the care recipient. This document will help guide the decision making needed by following the care recipient's wishes. It can also help avoid conflict within the family structure, as these are wishes expressed by care recipient that are being honored. The power of attorney can be both for medical and or financial, and only used when needed if the person you are helping can no longer do so. A trust. This is a legal document which assigns one or more individuals to supervise property or assets for the benefit of another person. There are cases when there were no pre-planning documents in place and families find themselves having to go through a conservatorship process. This can also be lengthy and expensive. This is done through a court process and a conservatorship is granted. Lastly, even if, with the conservatorship, as I was saying, it has to be done through a court process. So if, for example, you have a power of attorney in place, there's a trust in place, there's a good chance that that you wouldn't have to go through a conservatorship. Another very important document is the authorized representative form. Some agencies each have their own. For example, Social Security has a form, Medi-Cal has a form, health insurance companies have their form, and Veterans Administration have their form. You can have the power of attorney, which I think is very helpful. Personally, I have that too. But in addition to that, it can also be helpful to reach out to the Social Security office and obtain their form. Medi-Cal office have their form. The health insurance, this is really important. I cannot tell you how many families, have found themselves in a position where they need to reach out to the health insurance to ask a question or to get support, to get information on the doctor or a specialist. And if you are not listed on their record as an authorized representative, they will not be able to share this information with you. Very often, the person that's insured may not be able to provide this information. And so it is a good idea to beforehand, before this is needed, to have those documents in place. And then, of course, with the Veterans Administration. Also, advanced healthcare directives. This document can include multiple aspects of healthcare wishes for an individual, including end-of-life care decisions. Understanding this is a very delicate topic and not an easy one to be had. But it is a very important one because, as mentioned earlier, this is this care will be guided by the care recipient's wishes. And if they're able to do this at a time where they can still express and share, discuss and talk about, it can be very helpful for you as the family caregiver. As mentioned prior, family dynamics do come into play, and it's much, much easier to move forward with these type of decisions if you have a document such as this. The five wishes, um, you can request it. It is something that can be available. And if I recall that it is honored in several states, but you want to double check. Why I say that? This is just an example. For example, if you have an advanced care directive, say in the state of California, but then you move to a different state, and for whatever reason, that state doesn't honor it because they need their own. So you want to double check to make sure that whatever you have will be honored in the state that you're in. So as a family caregiver, having these documents in place can make your caregiving journey much easier. Keep in mind that these decisions are going to be made by the care receiver unless they are declared incapacitated and can no longer do so. The goal by sharing this, just bringing it to your awareness, is to help you prepare ahead of time when the care receiver is still able to make decisions and can designate their representative and express their wishes. So I hope that just being aware of this can provide some additional tips for you as you move forward in your caregiving journey. If you, for example, if you did change, if the care receiver did change health insurance for this year, 2025, then, or you can change insurance if you choose to, um, annually. So if there was a change, you want to double check to make sure that with the new insurance, this documentation they have it too. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in speaking of healthcare coverage, in general, there is Medicare, Medi-Cal, employer coverage, and private pay insurance, and each have their own eligibility requirements. Some individuals may have a PPO, or some, like I mentioned earlier, may have an HMO. Some may have straight what they call Medicare, Medi-Cal. So it's a good idea for you to make sure that you're aware of, the current coverage that's available. Maybe have a copy of it with you, because sometimes if you do need to make a call, you do need to go to the pharmacy, then you'll have the right documentation needed. It's a good idea too, like I mentioned earlier, to contact the health insurance and find out what any new benefits, services are being made available to them this year. And also find out if there's a care coordination team or a social worker or a health educator that can become part of your care support. By accessing this information, it can help you save time and lessen your stress. There are also nonprofit organizations that can help answer general questions related to Medicare, Medi-Cal, that are neutral. For example, if the person you're helping care for is maybe not Medicare eligible yet, but will be because they're going to be turning 65, or they've already met their waiting period to be considered eligible for Medicare, then you want to make sure that you understand, well, what does that coverage entail? What are things to look for if I'm going to choose a health insurance? And so they can provide neutral information so that you can help the care receiver make an informed decision. Next slide, please. As a reminder, please review the benefits annually, such as the copays, medications that are covered or not covered. One of my families currently had a sticker shock when she went to the pharmacy and was told she had like a $1,600 copayment. So you want to double check. Do you qualify for extra benefits, transportation, respite? Make sure the care receiver designates an authorized representative if able to do so in case it's needed in the future. Next slide, please. Emergency plan. This is a very timely topic. Unfortunately, as you're all aware, we're currently experiencing devastating fires here in California. And so for the emergency plan, these are just some of these things to be considered. You want to make sure there's emergency contact information readily available by the main door. And in the past, they had said to put it by the refrigerator. That can include the person's name, the language they speak, any allergies they may have, picture of a person, emergency contact, the number, the name. If you can, an emergency backpack with a 7-day pill emergency box for medicine, again with the picture of the person, an emergency contact info, range of undergarments, snacks, and water. Understanding that, this is an emergency, there might not be a lot of time, you might not be able to carry many things, but this was something that was suggested after the Hurricane Katrina, where unfortunately many of the individuals that were impacted were older adults. And some of the challenges that they had was helping them reconnect to their family. Some of them had cognitive impairment, and so they couldn't just provide information on who to contact or the number of the person to contact, which is why the idea of having the picture of the person in that backpack and in the back putting their name, their emergency contact, their telephone number would be something helpful. Some of you have expressed during our one-on-one consultations that it's not always easy to get extra medication to build the 7-day pill box. I still encourage you to ask and try to help you in preparing for an emergency. Something else that might be helpful in an emergency is having a medical ID bracelet, having your written down daily routine, again, readily available, a backup caregiver information, emergency keys for doors, a trusted neighbor, and if there are pets, who will help care for pets. This is really important. For example, if you don't live with the care recipient and there was an emergency, is there someone closer that would be able to open the door and get to them? If you haven't thought about that yet, it's something to consider. I'll share personally in my caregiving journey, I have given keys to the gate to two trusted people because I know that they need to be able to get into a gate in an emergency. I am quite a few miles away from my care receiver, so it's just peace of mind for me to know that someone can get there fast and be able to open the door. Also, on the refrigerator, I do have on the side with a magnet my emergency contact information, also my telephone number, the information that I shared, their name, allergies, language spoken, because in the event this is needed, it's very important to have readily available. There is a quick question about having this webinar available, and it will be. We will be sending out a replay along with the checklist of things that are being discussed. Next slide, please. Building your support system. This is really important. Number one, if you're part of the California Caregiver Resource Center and your community resources, you already have a team on your side. Joining a support group is very beneficial because you get to interact with other family caregivers that are on a similar journey, and they get to share and exchange information, tips, tools. You get to express and be understood. While many of you may have friends, family, Sometimes they don't completely understand because they're not on the caregiving journey. So it is helpful to have that extra support, counseling, one-on-one, religious organizations, and family and friends. Next slide, please. Continuing to build your support system. If you are working, some employers have the Employee Assistance Program. There is also the Family Caregiver Alliance. Throughout United States, there are area agencies on aging. Here in California, we have over 30 area agencies on aging. Mostly each county has one. So if you have, for example, friends, family that live not in LA County, they can reach out to their local area agency on aging and find out what's available to them in their area. What I'm talking about today refers to LA County. You also have disability resource centers that you can reach out to, and I have many a times been seeking support for the families I'm helping. Alzheimer's Association, Parkinson's Foundation, and many more. Next slide, please. So part of building your toolkit is focusing on self-care. Something that I learned a long time ago and I never forgot was the acronym PIESS, PIESSS, standing for your personal physical care, your intellectual care, your emotional care, your spiritual care, your social care, and your support system. This is a very critical aspect of caregiving. The caregiving journey can be challenging at times, and the care receiver does not always agree or accept the care needed, which can add to the stress for the family caregiver. Remember to make time for your own needs, as this is vital to your physical and mental well being. Self care is not selfish, it is for your own well being. I can't reiterate and stress that enough. Family caregivers face health risks due to caregiving burnout, which is why we highly encourage and promote self care. It is not unusual for the family caregiver to start feeling depressed, isolated, or even feel estranged from their own family and friends due to their caregiving responsibilities. Self care needs to be a part of the family caregiver's care plan. Let's discuss some ideas for self care. Please know that we are aware of the challenges and time constraints family caregivers face, but we encourage you and promote self care as a vital tool for your caregiving journey and your own well being. So let's take a moment to see in the chat box. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. These are just only some of the examples that some of the family caregivers have shared that they employ for self-care. For example, some enjoy baking, breathing exercises, a cup of tea, coffee with friends, dancing. I had a caregiver tell me yesterday she started dancing every day, 15 minutes in the morning before she starts her caregiving routine. And it's done wonders for her. Exercise, gardening, listening to music, meditation, painting, art, reading, spending time in nature, walking, and more. Can you please take a moment and in the chat box write something that you like to do for self-care or something that you would like to do for self-care if you haven't had a chance? Thank you. I see travel, baking, horseback riding, dancing. These are all great. Sewing. Thank you. A vacation, yes. Vacation, coffee with friends, yes. So by building your caregiver toolbox, hopefully you will find ways that will help free up some of your time so that you can take a moment for yourself and do these things, these wonderful things that you're sharing that you like to do that bring you joy. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that. And please remember, self-care is not selfish. It is very important for your own health and well-being. And all of us at one point will find ourselves on this caregiving journey. Next slide. I want to share these words with you that have stayed with me for a very long time. They were first said by our former First Lady, Ms. Rosalind Carter. There are only four kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And personally speaking, I've already covered three of those. In the chat box, where are you? Currently caregiving? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. As I see, caring for parents, currently caregiving, anticipate needing to caregive. All of us will fit these four at one point in our lives. Thank you. Next slide. So we have a few minutes to answer some of your questions. If somebody can please read the question for me. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so I have two questions, Veronica. One of them is returning back to some of the legal documents that you were mentioning. What if your parent refuses to set up a power of attorney and does need help? And connected to that, the same legal documents, we had another question. When it comes to having these conversations with our care recipients, our persons, right, our folks, they may be overwhelmed about finishing up a will or a trust or any of these documents. Do you happen to have any tips or recommendations to help the process along?
Thank you. Those both are great questions. And we do encounter this many a times where the care receiver is just not ready to have this very important discussion. Um, I would say maybe providing them with literature that they themselves can read. It depends on the family dynamics. Very recently, I encountered this myself where um, my mom would not, she just would not have end of life care discussion with me. Though tried for numerous years. Her answer was always, I don't know. But very recently, I took her to an attorney for something else. But this attorney asked her the same question, and she answered the attorney. So sometimes it might be that it's you asking the question. So if you have maybe somebody like a social worker bring it up to them, maybe the doctor bring it up to them, maybe have them join one of the webinars that they can listen in on, where they explain in a very neutral, just informative, so that they can understand the reason behind needing this very important document, at least starting with the health insurance, because that is really important. Sometimes when I'm talking to the families that I'm helping, it's like helping them explain to their care recipient, if there was an emergency and you can't go to the bank and we need to pay the rent, I wouldn't be able to access the money. And then you would have trouble, paying your rent or paying your mortgage. So giving them real scenarios where at least they start thinking about the reason why it's important versus them thinking that they're losing their independence, because it really comes down to that. Everybody wants to remain independent as much as possible. So honoring that, but still helping them get to a place where they can understand that this is to help them remain as independent as possible and only to be used when needed. There are nonprofit legal organizations that can be shared as a resource that might provide additional tips for you. So please let me know if this was helpful. And there's something to keep in mind also for future topics.
Thank you, Veronica. We also had some questions come in while you were answering these first two. The first one is, can a caregiver communicate privately to a doctor or of a care recipient or a social worker of a care recipient?
If they are authorized, they can. And I really think it depends on the doctor. For example, many a times I've gone, to doctor appointments and start building a connection and relationship with the team and my parents, both at the time, would say it's okay to talk to my daughter. So they knew me and they would talk to me. But it's most helpful if you do have it in writing.
Absolutely. Thank you. We also had Miss Holly share some details about her own family caregiving situation, and I think it can be something that is shared, which is when we are caring as family caregivers for folks who need, very intensive support, and they are offered the opportunity to transition to assisted living, but are resistant to that. And so the question is, as a family, what can we do as a family if they refuse to move, even when there are doctors who have encouraged them? What can we do? What are some of the suggestions or recommendations that can be applied here?
Thank you. You're right. It can be very difficult. It is not an easy discussion, and it will take some time, especially when it's like parent-child, adult-child relationship. It's the role reversal and the power dynamics. Parents feel that they're being told what to do or their life is trying to be controlled. When as an adult child, all you're trying to do is help them stay as safe as possible. But it's not perceived that way. So usually having someone else, a neutral party, come in to talk to them to, again, bring in some things that they might want to consider, try to do things in the home that will help it more accessible and safer for them. It is not an easy conversation and it will take time. And I'm happy to say that's one of the topics that will be addressed in the future C.A.L.M presentation coming up. So please, for those of you that haven't already signed up, please sign up to get these notices and alerts for new and upcoming presentations. There was someone that I read that was working and oftentimes cannot make it during the time that they're taking place, but they will be recorded and they will be sent out. So please, again, sign up so that you can receive these recordings and also the checklist. If the person asking the question is currently already enrolled in our program and has a family consultant working with them, please reach out to your family consultant and address some of these concerns or challenges that you're having so that they, together with you, can help you come up with a plan and ideas. And I will tell you, as a family consultant and also as a daughter who's also caregiving, I understand these conversations are not easy to have and they take time. It's taken a while, but little by little, my mom is coming around because little by little she is recognizing that there is more support needed. And this is in preparation to help her stay as independent as possible, but also safe.
Thank you, Veronica.
We have
you-
one more minute left, and I know we ran out of time for questions, but we will be taking a look and compiling them, and we'll do our best to respond to you. Again, if you have a family consultant, reach out to your family consultant. And I want to leave you with one last thought. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Respite. This is a very important word for us in our program, for you as a family caregiver. Respite. The R, rest, recharge. The E, exercise, keep active. The S, support, ask for help. The P, programs, contact agencies like ours. I, information, keep asking and asking. Time, take time for you. E, express your feelings and your needs. I really do thank you for joining us today, taking the time to build your caregiver toolkit. And I hope with the information shared, this will help add to it or at least get you started on it. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. These are some of the resources. We have our Los Angeles Resource Center, the caregivercalifornia.org, caregiver.org. We included DPSS LA County because they have programs for in-home support services. And if you're curious about the Medi-Cal, the elder care, and healthcare rights. Next slide, please. This is our main line and how you can reach us, our website, and our email. And again, there will be a recording that will be sent out along with the checklist, so you will have it. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you joining us this morning. Have a great rest of your day.